Enterprise AI. It promises to completely change the game for business, right? But here's a secret that's hiding behind all the hype. The simple truth is, the vast majority of these expensive, high-stakes projects, well, they're failing. And today, we're going to find out exactly why. Okay, let's just start with this number, because it is staggering. According to research from MIT, a full 95% of enterprise AI pilots fail to deliver any kind of rapid revenue acceleration. Think about that for a second. That's 19 out of every 20 projects just falling flat. And here's the kicker. This isn't just some small-scale experiment. Companies are pouring up to $40 billion a year into these AI initiatives. So what we've got is this paradox, a massive, massive investment running headfirst into an equally massive failure rate. And that really brings us to the $40 billion question we're going to unpack. What is actually going wrong inside these organizations? And more importantly, how can you and your teams avoid making these same mistakes? Okay, first up, let's dig into what's called the AI pilot paradox. It all starts with some pretty brutal math that shows how so many of these promising projects just seem to vanish on their way to actually getting used. So this chart really lays out the tough journey from a simple idea to real-world impact. You can see right here that 60% of companies start off by evaluating AI. But watch how fast that funnel narrows. Only about 20% ever even make it to the pilot stage. And the final number that actually reaches production, a tiny 5%. That's a 92% attrition rate from start to finish. It's just brutal. And the paradox gets even weirder when you look at where the money's actually going. A whopping 50 to 70% of AI budgets are aimed at these high-risk, flashy, customer-facing apps. Think sales and marketing bots. Meanwhile, the lower-risk, higher ROI projects in back-office automation are often completely ignored. You know, the board wants to see the sexy use cases, so the money just flows to the projects with the highest chance of failure. So, what's causing all this? I can tell you, it's not just bad luck. Researchers have actually identified 5 distinct systemic patterns that show up again and again. Let's break them down one by one. First up is what I like to call the shiny object syndrome. The losing approach always starts with the technology. It asks, hey, what can this cool new generative AI do? The winners, they completely flip the script. They ask a much better question. What specific business problems are costing us real money right now? So the lesson is clear. Start with a measurable cost, not just a cool capability. Next up, we have projects getting lost in the integration desert. You see, it's pretty easy to pilot a solution that automates one tiny feature in one single app. But that's not how real business gets done, is it? A real workflow, like, say, managing inventory, it needs data from 5, 6, maybe a half dozen different systems. Success means you have to automate the entire cross-system business process, not just a single isolated feature. Pattern number 3 is the governance void. This happens when employees start using what's called shadow AI, pasting sensitive company data into public tools. This creates a massive, massive compliance risk. For any company in a regulated industry, that's a career-ending move. It really highlights the absolute need for enterprise-grade AI that has audit trails for things like GDPR and SOX built in from day one. And then there's the hidden cost avalanche. So teams will approve a project based on that initial price tag. But what this chart shows, and this is shocking, is that ongoing maintenance can end up being up to 60% of the total cost of ownership. That's because the automations break every single time an underlying app gets updated, and that just completely crushes the expected ROI. And the final pattern is the speed mismatch. IT departments, as we know, often operate on these long 18-month delivery cycles. But the business world, it moves in 90-day cycles. So by the time that big, slow IT project finally launches, the business problem it was designed to solve has already changed. The solution is literally obsolete the day it arrives. So let's just quickly recap these 5 patterns. We've got the shiny object syndrome, that tech-first thinking, the integration desert with its siloed solutions, the governance void creating those huge compliance risks, the hidden cost avalanche from all that runaway maintenance, and finally, the speed mismatch between IT and the business. Honestly, any one of these can be fatal to a project. All right, that's enough about failure. Let's talk about success. How do the 5%, the ones who actually make it, how do they win? Well, it turns out they follow a very clear, repeatable formula. And listen, This isn't just a theory. Take JP Morgan. They didn't just set out to do AI. No, they automated a very specific, very costly business problem, reviewing contracts. And the result? They saved 360,000 hours of expensive legal work every single year. That is real, tangible, massive value. So the winners, they use something called a business-first architecture, and it's built on these three key pillars. First, the business users themselves are the ones who build the automation. This directly solves that speed mismatch we talked about. Second, the architecture is self-healing. That just means it adapts when the apps underneath it change instead of just breaking. That avoids the hidden cost avalanche. And third, governance is built in by design, which completely eliminates the governance void and all the risks of shadow AI. So what does this actually look like in practice? Let's walk through a real-world example and see exactly how this formula generates a crazy ROI. Okay, so before automation, this company was spending 288,000 euros every single year for its employees to manually process thousands of supplier invoices. I mean, this is a classic, repetitive, and super costly task, a perfect candidate for automation. Now, after they implemented a business-first automation solution, that annual cost dropped like a stone to just 36,000 euros. That is an annual savings of 250,000 euros, money that's now freed up to be invested somewhere else. And just look at the speed to value here. The payback period for the entire project was an incredible 3.6 months. They weren't waiting a year and a half to see a return on their investment. They were cash flow positive in the very same fiscal quarter. And this is the number that really gets attention in the boardroom. The projected 3-year ROI was a staggering 907%. This is the kind of real, material financial return that justifies more investment and proves, without a doubt, that the approach works. So the big question is, how do you join that successful 5%? Well, it really comes down to following this clear, actionable checklist. Here it is. This is your playbook. First, identify a specific high-cost business problem. Second, quantify that cost with precision. Third, pilot at production scale immediately. No more messing around in sandboxes. Fourth, build your governance in before you scale. And finally, expand using the proven ROI from your first win. Let each success fund the next one. So as we wrap this up, it really all comes down to this one critical question that every leader should be asking before they start any AI initiative. Are we solving a real business problem, or are we just showcasing a cool technology capability? Your answer to that question will likely determine whether you join the 95% who fail or the 5% who succeed.